The Roborock Saros 10R is incredibly thin for a robot vacuum. I remember being really impressed when I first saw the design at CES this year, and it's here, and it also works with Matter and Apple Home. And while this robot is packed with a lot of features, it's also missing some features that other Apple Home Matter compatible robots have. So are the features in this Saros 10R exactly what you need, or should you look at some of the other options? Well, Roborock did send me this vacuum for free, and they have sponsored other content on my channel. This video is not sponsored. Now, if you haven't purchased a robot vacuum in a while, you might be surprised how much smaller the packaging is when you get this thing out of the box. And I think this is great. It's nice to not have to deal with all the big packaging. I'm sure in certain ways it's more environmentally friendly, but it also means that you don't get a lot of the spare parts or extra things you might have in a high-end robot vacuum in the past. So you don't have extra brushes. I do love that Roborock includes a second vacuum bag for the base station here, which is very helpful, but you will need to go order your own cleaning solution. It doesn't come in the box, but that does get to a notable feature that this robot does have a spot for cleaning solution, so it will take care of mixing any cleaning solution into the water for mopping. It's not required, but it can help make your floors just that much better. Setting up in the Roborock app was pretty straightforward for me, and we'll get more into those details in just a minute, but let's talk more about the specs of the robot. Now, in our modern world, there are 1,000,001 ways you could get a comprehensive list of all the specs of this robot and compare it to other robots, so I'm not gonna list out all the specs here, but as much just go into the ones that I think are notable and what they mean to me and what they might mean to you. So the dual tangle brush, I think, does a great job with hair, and it's a clever design to kind of get that whole concept much smaller than it is in other vacuums, again, contributing to the 3.14-inch chassis design. Its optical avoidance is also very impressive, even though they don't have a little LiDAR turret on the top like you see with a lot of robot vacuums. This robot does a great job avoiding obstacles, and of course, the key aspect of that thin spec of 3.14 inches is that it can get under lots more furniture. I also find the Hyperforce suction to be just plenty strong enough to pick up any kind of big crumbs, even things like a little crayon or Lego piece. It's gonna take care of that, no problem. And that's been a real big improvement across the industry in the past, let's say, year and a half, is the suction power on these robots is much stronger. Now, I mentioned the cleaning solution earlier, which is in the dock. The dock looks beautiful. I love the design, and it's also a lot smaller than some other robot vacuum docks. My one complaint, though, is that the front of it is gonna show any kind of dirt or fingerprints, so you almost have to clean your base station for your home cleaning robot. It's whatever. And of course, the base station has a lot of the typical features you'd expect from a robot vacuum these days. The robot can leave the mops in the base station when it's not using them for just a vacuum only job. There's a clean water tank and a dirty water tank, so you can dump out the dirty water tank and then refill the clean water tank. And of course, your water usage is gonna vary depending on how much you set the water flow rate to be in the app for mopping. But one key feature that this does not have, that other robot vacuums that work with Matter do have, is a self-cleaning mop. So Ecovac's X8 and X9 Pro Omni vacuums, they have roller mops which will clean themselves as they roll around in the vacuum. Now, I think this whole self-cleaning thing is a little bit of a gimmick, unless maybe you're like vacuuming up lots of tiny liquid spills all over your home, but it comes with a roller mop. And I think roller mops in a lot of cases are just a little bit better than these spinning mop pads. So if mopping is your highest priority here, you might consider the Ecovacs, because it's gonna work with Matter, of course, and give you that roller mop. But of course, with the roller mop comes more thickness to the robot, so it's not gonna be able to get under as much furniture as the Saros 10R. The other thing the Saros 10R has, which Ecovacs does not, is the Adapt Lift chassis. It's able to lift itself to climb up or down ledges over 1.5 inches thick. So this could be a big feature for you if you have a doorway that has some ledge that's a little hard to get over, or maybe an older home where the floor for one room is just a little bit lower or higher than another room. This might give you enough clearance to get around those, and then your robot can vacuum the entire floor in one job. Of course, if you're newer to robot vacuums, don't worry. Like a lot of robot vacuums these days, it does have sensors to know if it's going to go off the stairs or some other big fall. It can take care of that. You don't have to let it know. Now onto the Matter integration. I'm going to focus on it with Apple Home, but a lot of this applies whether you're using Apple Home or another smart home platform. Of course, here on this channel, I talk a lot about Apple and smart home tech, so if you're into that, consider subscribing. Now, of course, you can open up the Home app and start and stop the vacuum with Apple Home, but you could also just open up the Roborock app to do that and get way more control details. It is nice to be able to see the status inside of Apple Home, but the real benefits are going to be in triggering things with, let's say, Apple Shortcuts app or some other kind of automation in Apple Home. Of course, with shortcuts, Roborock does have a shortcut for their app that can trigger the vacuum, but it's just kind of their basic app intent spun off into shortcuts, and it's not really helpful. You're gonna have more luck controlling this vacuum with the Control Home shortcut from Apple and then talking to your robot vacuum that way. You could also tie it into something like a scene. So if you like to have your robot vacuum at night, it's generally better to have the lights on for robot vacuums that have cameras to sort of see around your home. And so you could have a scene that turns on the lights in the floor where your robot is and then also starts the vacuuming process. Unfortunately, Apple Home doesn't have any ability to trigger automations based on robot events. So you couldn't say when the robot starts cleaning, then just turn on the lights on the first floor, or turn off the lights when the robot is done. Another limitation Roborock has compared to Ecovacs is that Roborock does not share the zones of the robot to Matter. So with Matter's specification, the robot can share the different zones it knows how to clean, so then Apple Home or another platform could tell the robot, hey, I just want you to clean the dining room. And the robot knows what the dining room means, but in this case, you can only tell it to just clean everything, not a specific room. Now, that's where, again, it gets confusing because according to Matter, they don't really share rooms, and these rooms in the robot vacuum are really just arbitrary zones, which probably correspond to a room name in your smart home platform like Apple Home, but they might not. There's a little bit of a confusing layer here, and so I could maybe see how Roborock might think this is confusing to users, or they might not have just bothered to implement this feature. Either way, it's a bummer, but maybe Roborock can address it in a software update. Now, if you do want to tell your robot to clean a particular room, you can use Roborock's voice assistant called Rocky. So you say hello and then Rocky, and then you can tell it to start or stop cleaning, or also, clean the dining room, vacuum and mop this area. Hello, Rocky.
I'm here.
Go back to your dock.
Okay, end the current task and start docking.
I don't really use these kind of assistants all that much myself, but I did want to mention it here. That's something you could get into. Now, I also don't really use Apple Home integration that much. I've played with different vacuums that do talk to Apple Home, and there are some cool tricks of automations and ways you can make things faster. But most of the time, I still find myself going to the manufacturer's app, going to the Roborock app and saying, I want to dial in these detailed cleaning settings for this particular circumstance. Maybe the dining room is the only room where I actually want it to clean for any number of reasons. Or maybe I want it to vacuum and not mop. Of course, I could set that in Apple Home, but I want to adjust the suction power of the vacuum and tell it to vacuum twice instead of once in all the areas. There's just a lot of detailed settings you get in an app that you don't get in all these other ways to trigger automations. And Roborock's app is very well designed overall. I find it's the easiest to use of the robot manufacturers I've tried. You get all the detailed settings like the water flow for the mop. But one thing that I would love to see Roborock add is a live activity for their apps. So then when I close the app on my iPhone, I'd be able to see on my lock screen a quick glance of the status of my robot vacuum and how far it is into the cleaning process. One other feature the Saros 10R has, which you can use through the app like a lot of robot vacuums these days, is remote access, where you can tune into the camera on the robot and then steer the robot around your floor to see different things in your home. Now you have to set this up with the app and the robot while you're at home, and then you could do it while you're away. And then when you tune in, the robot will announce that this kind of viewing session is happening. That way, if someone's there, they understand that you could be looking through the camera. There could be any number of edge case scenarios when you're away from home where this could be handy, maybe checking on something in your kitchen to make sure it's turned off or in a good state, or especially if you have a pet at home where you don't really have a good camera where that pet is, you could just drive the robot over to it, check on the pet, say something to it, and then you can just have the robot take care of going back to its dock as you move about with whatever you were doing before. So with all these features that the Roborock Saros 10R has compared to other vacuums, I find this to be a very well-designed, solid Apple Home robot. I think the Roborock app is very easy to use and gives you a lot of detailed control. You do lose out on some of the latest and greatest features of the mopping of robot vacuums, but you also gain a much thinner, sleek design. But I think in general, unless you either want the latest and greatest mopping, or you see yourself doing a lot of automation where you need specific room cleaning from Apple Home or another Matter platform, then those two scenarios aside, the Roborock Saros 10R is a really good robot. There'll be a link to check it out at the top of the description. And you might have heard me mention Ecovacs in this video. If you want to check out my review of the Ecovacs X8 Pro Omni, which is a competing, similarly spec'd robot with those mopping capabilities, you can check out that video over here. Thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.